Good evening, friends. How's your week going? I'm Derek, 41, and I run a small non-profit now. But a few weeks ago, I walked into my mother's house for a birthday party I didn't ask for. There was a green apple gin cocktail in my hand and a folder marked Trust on the table. They said it was a celebration, but the papers said I was giving up $5 million. What happened next changed everything. Has life ever blindsided you like that? Tell us where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to catch the full story. I pulled up to my mother's house in Burlington, Vermont. The tires crunched over gravel I'd paid for 3 years ago. It was the same driveway I helped fund when the old one cracked, the same one I hadn't stepped onto since the day we fought over Dad's hospital bill. Late November air wrapped around the car like wet wool. Cold, clinging, with the scent of rotting leaves and cinnamon potpourri leaking from somewhere inside. They never called me unless they needed something. The house looked polished. Overly so. White siding pressure washed clean, glass windows glowing yellow through layered lace curtains. A pair of overpriced maple wreaths hung perfectly centered on the double doors. Seasonal, tasteful, calculated. I stayed in the driver's seat longer than I should have. Engine idling. A text from my mother had arrived the night before. Derek, come by the house at 6. We have something special for you. Love, Mom. No smiley face, no explanation, just that. I turned off the engine, adjusted the collar of my coat, and stepped into the chilly dusk. A line of unfamiliar cars crowded the curb. Distant laughter floated through the closed windows, muffled like sound trapped in a snow globe. I rang the bell. Janine opened the door in full makeup, her signature coral lipstick, matching pearl earrings, and that blouse she wore to weddings and real estate closings. Her smile stretched wide, just past natural. Surprise, she sang, pulling me into a hug. Happy early birthday, sweetheart. The living room was packed. Cousins I hadn't seen in years, great uncles, distant aunts, even my cousin Brent, who lived in Connecticut and only ever showed up when someone died or got engaged. Derek, they chorused. Happy birthday. Streamers clung to the ceiling fan. On the table, a cake shaped like a ledger book read, Happy 40th, Derek, still balanced. Someone thought they were clever. I forced a smile. Wow, you really got me. Janine beamed. Of course we did. It's not every day our golden boy hits the big 4-0. Golden boy. I hadn't heard that since the night she asked me to co-sign Logan's student loan. That loan never got paid. My credit still hadn't recovered. Let's get you a drink, she said, already leading me toward the bar cart. Green apple gin, your favorite, right? I hadn't touched gin since I was 25. One too many hangovers and a strong association with regret cured me fast. Howard stood by the fireplace in his usual navy quarter zip and khakis, sipping something brown from a highball glass. He raised it half an inch in silent greeting. Logan leaned against the piano, scrolling through his phone, not even looking up. Nice crowd, I said quietly, taking the glass. Janine placed a hand on my back and steered me to the center of the room. You're the guest of honor, honey. We wanted to celebrate you properly. She was laying it on thick. That much was obvious. After a round of lukewarm toasts and cake cutting, she guided me to the couch. Her hand never left my shoulder. My drink sat untouched. That's for you, she said softly, nodding toward the side table. A leather folder rested there, pristine, almost decorative. The kind used by financial advisors and estate lawyers. Gold letters stamped across the cover read, Edith Chamberlain Living Trust. My stomach tightened. What is this? I asked, keeping my tone light. Oh, nothing urgent, Janine said quickly. Just some papers your grandmother had set aside. We can look at them later. Tonight is about you. Howard cleared his throat from across the room. Just a formality, he echoed, avoiding my eyes. Logan finally looked up. We've all signed already. It's no big deal. The room suddenly felt too warm. I glanced around. People were pretending to chat, but ears were tilted our way. Janine reached for my cocktail, handing it to me again. You work with this stuff every day, she said sweetly. You'll breeze right through. Something sharp flickered beneath her voice, urgency disguised as affection. I looked at the folder, then at her. I didn't speak, didn't smile. Instead, I took a breath, raised the drink to my lips, and let it hover there. The gin smelled synthetic, sweet, artificial. It reminded me of who I used to be and how hard I'd worked to bury that version of myself. I set the glass down. I'll take a look, I said quietly. My fingers brushed over the folder's edge, its leather too new to feel like anything Edith would have chosen. My thumb caught on the clasp. I said nothing, but my hand was already reaching for the folder. Just a formality, sweetheart, my mother smiled. Her voice trembled beneath the syrup. I'd heard it before, when she asked me to cover Logan's tuition the second time, when she wanted me to co-sign the loan for her second husband's RV. Always sweet, always shaking. The party had thinned out. A few relatives lingered in the kitchen, scraping frosting off paper plates, whispering in tones too soft to be innocent. The dishwasher hummed in the background, the only thing in the house doing exactly what it was supposed to. I sat on the same couch, folder unopened in my lap. The air had shifted. No longer festive, no longer warm. The holiday lights draped along the mantel flickered like they were tired of pretending, too. Edith once warned me, if they corner you smiling, start looking for the trap. I ran my hand across the leather cover again. The words Edith Chamberlain Trust felt embossed on my skin now. I flipped it open. 5 pages, all pristine. No sticky notes, no wrinkled corners. Not like the documents Edith used to keep. Those were always scribbled with questions and comments in the margins. Clause 14 caught my eye. In the event the primary beneficiary is unable or unwilling to administer the trust, the rights and responsibilities will pass equally to the remaining signatories. I read it aloud. The kitchen quieted. Logan entered with a half-eaten cupcake in his hand. What's the problem? He asked, chewing. We all signed. It's no big deal. Janine folded a napkin on her lap. You're overthinking this, honey. No, I'm reading it, I said. That clause revokes my rights. You've already signed as alternates. Howard stirred his drink, but said nothing. The ice clinked like a nervous tick. I turned to Janine. Why wasn't I contacted about this months ago? Edith's trust was clear. I'm the sole executor. She leaned forward. She was old, Derek. Things changed. She didn't understand how complicated taxes can be. This way, the burden isn't all on you. Burden? I echoed. It's a $5 million trust. Logan sat beside me, slapping his hand on my back. Man, don't make this hard. Everyone else already signed. Uncle Rich, Aunt Pam, even me. We're trying to help you. I looked at him. You forged her initials on that FAFSA form when you were 21. He blinked. That was different, he muttered. Was it? Silence draped the room again. The dishwasher clicked into rinse. I stared at the folder, then back at Janine. You're angry, she said softly. I get it. But Edith wouldn't want you to make a scene. You don't get to use her like that, I replied. Her smile faltered. She made this hard on all of us, Derek. She left you everything. It's not fair. We're still family. Family, I said, letting the word hang. You cut me out the minute I stopped writing checks. Howard finally spoke, his voice quiet. It's not personal, it's practical. Practical is what people say when they're trying to feel less guilty. Janine's voice sharpened. She trusted you to lead. Don't throw that away just because you're having one of your moods. My moods, I snapped. You mean my refusal to be manipulated? Logan stood up. You're making this awkward for everyone. I stood, folder still in hand. You made it awkward the minute you turned a birthday into a bait and switch. I returned to the couch and sat down slowly. I placed the folder on my lap, letting everyone watch. I'm not signing. You could feel the recoil, not audible, no gasps, no yells, just tension. Thick, cold, crawling over skin, the kind of silence that feels personal. Janine tilted her head, her eyes narrowing just slightly. If you don't, she said, the syrup now gone from her voice, there will be consequences. I hadn't spoken to Edith's attorney since the funeral. Now I was outside his office, heart hammering against my ribs like it knew something I didn't. The brass plaque read, Louis Carmichael, Esquires, in serif font, dignified but worn. The glass door creaked when I pulled it open. Inside, the air smelled like old envelopes and lemon wood polish. A receptionist glanced up from behind a monitor and offered a polite nod. Mr. Langridge? I nodded. He's expecting me. She motioned toward a door halfway down the hall. Go right in, he said to skip the waiting. Lewis's office hadn't changed since Edith brought me here years ago to discuss her will. Library walls, an old globe in the corner, 2 armchairs that made you sit straighter than you meant to. Derek, Louis said, standing. His suit was dark gray, his tie muted red, his face lined with quiet intelligence. I wondered how long it would take for you to reach out. I shook his hand, then sat. I need clarity. You're not the only one. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a small, padded envelope. He placed it between us on the desk, like it might bite. She left this with specific instructions, he said, not to be opened unless the family tried to override the terms of her trust. Guess we've passed that threshold, I muttered. Louis offered a tired smile. Edith was many things, but naive wasn't one of them. He handed me the envelope. I opened it slowly. Inside was a USB drive, a small silver one with a paper label that simply read, Derek in Edith's looping cursive. She also left a sealed document confirming the current trust status. You are the sole executor and beneficiary unless one condition is triggered. I raised an eyebrow. Which is? If anyone, by coercion, emotional pressure, or coordinated manipulation, attempts to force your hand, he said, the trust automatically redirects. The full amount transfers to the Chamberlain Pediatric Foundation. She really wrote that? He slid the clause across the desk. I read it twice. Her phrasing was precise and brutal. She knew them better than I did, I said quietly. She knew you better too. I stared at the USB. Did you watch it? Number she asked that it be private, for your eyes only. I slid it into my pocket. There's a conference room down the hall if you want to use it, he added. I nodded, stood, and made my way to the narrow room, closing the door behind me. A laptop was already open on the table. I plugged in the drive. The screen blinked, then loaded a single file. For Derek.mp4, I pressed play. Edith appeared, seated at her kitchen table, wearing the same blue cardigan she always wore when baking apple bread. Her hair was thinner, her face smaller than I remembered. But her eyes were sharp. If you're watching this, she said, they did exactly what I feared. I leaned in. I know they love money more than truth. I've seen it. I raised them. But I didn't raise you. She paused. You were the only one who stayed when I fell. The only one who showed up when the medications got too expensive, when the furnace broke. That's why the trust is yours. I felt something uncoil inside me. They will guilt you. They will smile when they lie. That's their gift. But I left you this because you'll know what to do with it. She took a breath. If they try to force you, the money goes to children who actually need it. I'd rather strangers benefit than see you bullied. Her voice softened. I love you. That's not why I did this. But it helps. The screen went black. I sat there for a long moment, blinking hard. When I returned to Louis's office, he looked up. I assume you saw it. I nodded. Can I get a second copy of that drive? He arched a brow. Planning to hand it out like candy? No, I said. Something tells me I'll need it soon. My living room was quiet, too quiet, as I dimmed the lights and clicked play. The small projector whirred to life, casting a pale rectangle across the clean wall above my bookcase. A dozen folding chairs lined the space, arranged with reluctant symmetry. I'd cleared the coffee table, vacuumed twice, and moved every family photo into a drawer. I didn't want distractions, not tonight. They used a party to trap me. Now I was throwing my own version. Janine arrived first, draped in a beige shawl that made her look softer than she was. Howard followed, hands in his coat pockets like he was here on probation. Logan slouched in behind them, earbuds dangling, eyes already scanning for an exit. Then came the cousins, Brent and Melissa and Claire, all polite smiles and careful hellos. Marissa sat closest to me. She didn't speak much, but she held my gaze when I looked for it. That was enough. I cleared my throat. Thank you all for coming. I know the other night ended abruptly. Janine tilted her head. It wasn't our intention to upset you, Derek. Sure, I said. That's why I'm doing this, to clarify intentions. I pointed the remote at the projector and hit play. The screen blinked, and Edith appeared, just as she had in Louis's office. The same blue cardigan, the same lined face, the same steady voice. If you're watching this, she began, then they did exactly what I feared. Janine's face froze mid-smile. Howard leaned forward. Logan muttered something under his breath. I know they love money more than truth, Edith continued. But I didn't raise you, Derek. I raised them, and I know what they're capable of. I felt the air change. The room, which had been comfortably indifferent, grew sharp. Someone shifted in their chair. Brent folded his arms. Claire put a hand over her mouth. I left the trust in your hands, Edith said, and I made sure they couldn't bully you out of it. If they try, the money goes to children who actually need it. Let them chew on that. Howard's glass of water trembled slightly in his hand. And if they cry, if they guilt you, Edith added, remember, guilt is just a leash they yank when they want obedience. Janine's lips thinned to a colorless line. I love you, Derek, and I'm proud of you. That's not why I did this, but it's part of it. The screen faded to black. Silence followed, not the kind that begs to be filled, but the kind that dares anyone to speak. Logan was the first to break. You set us up, he snapped. No, I said. You set yourselves up. I just let you watch the replay. Janine stood. That video, she didn't mean for it to be used like this. She was confused, tired. She was clear, I said, and she knew what you'd try. Howard opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked smaller than I remembered. You don't understand how this looks, Janine said, dragging us here to gloat. This isn't gloating, I said evenly. It's context. You gave your version of the story at that party. Now I'm giving mine. Claire raised a tentative hand. So, you're not signing anything? I shook my head. Number, and if any version of that paperwork shows up again, the entire amount goes to charity. Brent whistled low. Well, that's one way to ruin Thanksgiving. Logan stood. You always thought you were better than us. No, I said. I just stopped pretending you were better than me. He turned and walked out, the door slamming behind him. Howard glanced at Janine. We should go. She hesitated, her eyes flicking to the now blank wall, as if hoping Edith might come back and change her mind. When they were gone, the room slowly emptied. A few cousins mumbled goodbyes. Some didn't say anything at all. Marissa remained. That was surgical, she said finally. I nodded. She looked at the projector. You okay? No, I said. But I'm getting there. She reached over and took my hand. I looked down at the USB still plugged into the laptop. Its tiny red light blinked like a heartbeat. Now, I said quietly, let's talk about what happens next. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The word fraud landed like a gavel in my chest, echoing through a hollow I hadn't realized was there. We were seated in the back corner of a cafe overlooking Lake Champlain, far from anyone who might recognize me or overhear. Morning fog curled along the glass outside, muting the sharp outlines of sailboats and parking meters. Our table was cluttered with coffee mugs, highlighters, and pages that smelled faintly of toner and dust. Noah slid a printout toward me. Look at line 18B. Claimed medical expenses for a dependent. You were listed as the dependent, Derek. I was 32 that year, I said, stunned. Healthy, employed, living in D.C. He nodded grimly. And yet, your social security number is all over these forms. Janine submitted the paperwork through an e-filing system registered to their old tax prep software. I rubbed my temples. They knew what they were doing. Noah opened another manila folder, this one thicker, labeled Real Estate/Education. He tapped the top sheet. This is a mortgage agreement from 2010. Guess whose name was listed as co-borrower? I didn't have to guess. Me. Yup, for a property Howard bought as an investment while you were in graduate school. Your credit score took a hit after the second refinance. I never even knew they bought a second place. Marissa reached for my hand. This isn't just negligence. They've been using you like a shadow bank. I felt nausea rise in my throat, then settle into something colder, harder. Noah kept going. Here's the one that really matters. He slid over another document. Transfers from Edith's trust, 6 months before she died. Multiple withdrawals, each just under the reporting threshold. Where'd the money go? He opened a new folder. Shell companies, registered to a P.O. box in Barr, Vermont. One of them, Birch Creek Ventures, lists Howard as managing partner. I blinked. Birch Creek was supposed to be the family fund. Marissa leaned in. It was a front, and they funneled your inheritance into it, banking on you never checking. I can't believe this, I said, though a part of me could. Edith had warned me. If they touch your name, go to war with proof. Noah softened his tone. You could build a case, start with the trust, then go after the company. What happens if I lose? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Marissa met my gaze. Then at least you fought for your name. I picked up the folder again. It didn't feel as heavy this time. Less like a burden, more like a blade. I thought back to that night in the living room. Janine's syrupy smile, Logan's smug dismissal, Howard's silence, and all the years before it, when family meant a dozen quiet leeches draining me in plain sight. The numbers on the spreadsheet weren't just digits. They were choices. They were fingerprints on my life. I need everything, I said. Emails, transfers, signatures, build the timeline. Noah nodded. Already started. And the trust? I asked. Marissa pulled out a notarized copy from her satchel. Still intact, but vulnerable if they push back hard. I exhaled slowly. Then we need to hit first. A group of college students laughed 2 tables over. The cafe steamed with the scent of cinnamon muffins and espresso shots. Outside, the fog began to lift, revealing the lake's still water, flat and waiting. I looked at the folder again, this time not with fear, but strategy. My name showed up on 3 corporate loans. I hadn't signed a single one. I stared at the scanned documents glowing from my laptop screen, each bearing a clean digital signature. Derek M. Langridge. My middle initial was correct. The style even mimicked my scrawl. But I'd never touched those files, never authorized anything close to 6-figure business loans. Across the room, Noah was hunched over my printer, feeding through another stack of paperwork. Outside, snow tapped against the window. Quiet, insistent. First snow of December, they'd said on the radio. It felt like a warning. Edith's voice echoed from memory. If something smells off in the books, start with the signatures. I've seen forgery before, Noah said, setting another sheet aside. But this is layered. Whoever did this knew your style. The timestamps match financial quarter closings. It was meant to look routine. Routine fraud, I muttered. We were working off 2 laptops, 3 printed sets, and a shared folder that now housed over 70 flagged items. My dining table looked like the wreckage of a CPA's office mid-divorce. Langridge and Burr applied for 3 corporate loans, Noah continued, 2 from state-level small business assistance funds, and 1 private bridge loan through a third-party lender. All 3 list you as co-guarantor. I never even worked there full-time, I said. They used your name because it had clean credit, and you wouldn't ask questions. I exhaled hard. They treated me like a liability until they needed a name to exploit. Noah nodded. You were their collateral. A notification pinged. I checked my phone. Marissa, check your email. Just found something wild in the 2018 folder. I opened the inbox. A chain of internal emails popped up, half from Logan, half from Howard. One in particular made my chest tighten. If Derek ever asks, just say it was part of the college fund recovery. He never kept close track anyway. Subject line, Asset Reallocation Strategy, Birch Creek Q4. They'd been redirecting assets from the trust. The college fund recovery was a euphemism for skimming. Got it, I said, forwarding the chain to our shared drive. Noah glanced over. That's criminal intent. He opened another spreadsheet. Birch Creek Ventures received deposits days after each trust disbursement. The routing numbers match, just through a web of shell accounts. How many? 5 so far. 1 in Delaware, 1 in Nevada, 3 out of Vermont. Same structure. No physical office, same tax agent address. Let me guess. Howard's name shows up on at least 1. 2, he said, pulling the tab forward. And Logan's name is buried in a vendor contract for consulting services. I rubbed my temples again, more out of habit than fatigue. My nerves weren't tired. They were sharp now, cold and precise. The folder Edith had originally left me, its leather worn, now stuffed with new evidence, sat beside my laptop. I opened it again, slid in the new pages. I could feel the line tightening around them. 1 forged document could be blamed on sloppiness. 3 was a pattern. Dozens was a takedown. Langridge and Burr, I said aloud. They always said it was a legacy business. It's a liability machine, Noah corrected. And Edith knew, I said. She warned me. That's why she locked the trust, why she recorded that video. I stood and paced the room once, letting the pressure in my chest dissipate just enough to think clearly. This isn't just about my name, I said. It's about how many people they've hurt using it. Noah met my eyes. You could take the whole thing down. I stood in Lewis's office again. He slid a new document across the desk, already signed. The last time I was here, fog clung to the windows like a question. This time the sun cut through in beams, golden and cold. The heater buzzed quietly beneath the old oak. Floorboards. It smelled faintly of paper, varnish, and inevitability. Louis didn't speak for a moment. He just watched me as I picked up the document, one line at a time, soaking into my brain. Clause 19.4, Litigation Trigger. In the event that any party named within this trust initiates legal action, civil or criminal, against the primary beneficiary with the intent to challenge distribution, administration, or structural integrity of the estate, 50% of all active liquid assets shall be immediately and irrevocably transferred to the non-profit organizations outlined in Appendix. I looked up at him. This wasn't in the version I saw before. He nodded. She asked me to hold this version back unless she felt the need. After the folder incident and your visit, I went back through my files. She left it with a private memo, said you'd know when to activate it. My throat was dry. I glanced down at the embossed paper again. Each line of legalese was deliberate, clean, and completely devoid of sentiment. But I could hear Edith's voice in every clause. She always said the trust was a tool, I murmured, not just an inheritance. Lewis tapped the appendix at the back. She named 4 organizations, 2 children's medical funds, 1 advocacy group for elder financial abuse, and a legal aid clinic in Montpellier. My fingers traced the line that mentioned the Vermont Elder Defense Network. I remembered when she'd first started donating to them. Quietly, like most things she did. Not for show, just for shield. What if they never sue? I asked, voice low. Then everything stays intact, he said, but if even one of them files a petition, probate, challenge, appeal, it triggers the clause automatically. 50%, I said, gone, locked into external disbursement. I leaned back, folding my hands behind my head. That's brutal. It's protective, Louis corrected. And smart. We sat for a moment in silence, the kind that doesn't ask for filler. I want to activate it, I said. He raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? I've already been lied to, signed over, used. I'm done playing fair while they weaponize family ties. Lewis opened a small safe beneath the desk and retrieved a thumb drive, the same silver one Edith had left behind. The original copy of her video and the corresponding documents were stored on it. He plugged it into his system and began uploading the new clause into the official chain of trust documents. As the progress bar filled, I felt something shift, not in the air, not in the room, but in my spine. A quiet, anchored resolve. This will send a copy to their counsel if they act, Lewis explained. It doesn't go public unless triggered. I nodded. That's the point. He slid over the digital pen and opened the e-sign window on his monitor. I paused, eyes scanning the clause one more time. If they push legal action, Edith had told me, I put in a failsafe. I signed. He printed a notarized copy from my records and passed it to me in a slim folder. And Derek, Lewis added, this clause, it gives you leverage, not just protection. I looked at him. Meaning? Meaning they can't afford to misstep now. The threat of losing half the estate will scare them more than any letter from a lawyer. Outside the window, downtown Burlington looked quiet, December tucking everything under gray light and distant sirens. Inside, the heater kicked again under the floor. My chair creaked as I stood. I placed the folder into my messenger bag alongside the others. The original, the video drive, the flagged forms. My arsenal now had weight, evidence, strategy, and Edith's ghost guiding the whole war effort. As I reached the door, I stopped. If they sue, I whispered, they lose everything. You're really going to sue your own family? Marissa asked. No, I said. I'm giving them the choice to stop. Our boots crunched against the frozen gravel of the lake trail, each step cutting through wind and brittle frost. Lake Champlain had started to ice along the edges, thin white rings where the water couldn't fight off the cold. The air smelled like pine and December. I kept my eyes ahead, but I could feel Marissa studying me. Her breath came in soft clouds, visible for just a second before vanishing. We'd walked this trail 100 times. It was usually where we made small talk, movies, weekend plans, complaints about overpriced coffee. But today, the quiet carried weight. Have you already decided? She asked. I shook my head. I've drafted everything, but I haven't sent anything yet. You've done enough to win, she said. Legally, at least. With everything you and Noah found. It's not about winning, I said. It's about what I lose doing it. She stopped walking. I did too. Then say it out loud, she said. Say what this would cost you. I turned toward the lake. The water was flat, barely moving. I lose whatever scrap of family I still had. Illusion or not. I turn my name into a headline. I spend the next year in and out of hearings being dissected like an exhibit. And what do you gain? I hesitated. Justice. Or control, she said. That hit, because part of it was true. I told myself I'd never be like them, I said. Never use money to punish. Never use leverage to bend people into apologies. You haven't yet, she said. But you're standing at the edge of that choice. I looked down at the letter in my hand. Folded, not sealed. I'd written it at 2 a.m., sitting cross-legged on the living room floor with the heater humming beside me. It wasn't a legal document. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation to speak, to stop. To forgive? Marissa asked, almost reading my mind. I sighed. To give them one last chance not to become the villains they're pretending they aren't. She took a step closer. You know they might not take it? I know, I said. But that's on them. We resumed walking, slower this time. The path narrowed ahead, curling near the reeds where we used to skip stones in warmer months. I remembered coming here once after Edith's funeral, needing space to breathe without expectations pressing in. Marissa reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small thermos, handed it to me. Chamomile? She said. You look like you've been sleeping in your thoughts. I cracked a smile and took a sip. Tastes like surrender. Or peace, she said. I pulled out my phone and opened the letter. A simple PDF. To Janine, Howard, Logan, and the rest. I have more than enough to take this to court and win, but I'd rather not win that way. I'm offering a conversation. Not a trap, not a second ambush. Just one meeting. Where we talk, honestly, no lawyers present. You know how to reach me. This offer expires in 5 days. After that, I proceed however I must. Derek Marissa leaned in. Are you sure they'll even read it? They'll read it, I said. They won't be able to resist. We reached the overlook bench, now covered in a thin dusting of snow. I brushed it off and sat. Marissa stayed standing. You don't owe them this, she said softly. I know, I said, but I owe it to myself. She nodded. Then send it, but don't hope too hard. I pressed send. The whoosh of the email leaving my outbox was barely audible, but inside it echoed louder than any argument. I gave them one last door, I said. If they walk through it, we talk. If they burn it down... I looked out across the lake again. The horizon was smeared with pink and slate blue. The kind of dusk you only get after cold has already claimed the day. Then I won't hold back again. I walked into Langridge and Burr's marble lobby. Funny, I'd funded it without even knowing. The floor was polished to a surgical shine, so clean I could see my reflection in the dark stone tile beneath my boots. A massive holiday wreath hung above the reception desk, all silver bells and blue ribbon. Corporate Christmas, neat and hollow. I scanned the room, the same front desk, the same framed mission statement. But today, I wasn't a visitor. I wasn't a ghost walking through someone else's building. Today, I had purpose in my pocket and names on my side. Noah was waiting for me in the elevator bay, tie slightly crooked, cheeks flushed from the morning cold. He handed me a thumb drive and a small folder. Final copies, spreadsheets on the drive, notarized statements in the folder. You ready? I funded their lobby, I said again, still stuck on the absurdity. Noah smirked. Yeah, and half their executive travel. We stepped into the elevator. The doors closed on the sound of distant typing and faint holiday music. Langridge and Burr's offices took up the 12th and 13th floors. When we stepped out, I could already feel the temperature shift. Not physically, but in the way people looked up from their desks and then immediately looked down again. Noah and I bypassed reception and walked straight into the boardroom. I'd requested an emergency meeting 48 hours ago under the company's bylaws, triggered by fraud allegations tied to executive misuse. It forced their hand, forced them to gather. Inside, 6 board members sat scattered around the long walnut table. 2 others joined remotely on screen. Most were older, semi-retired, selected more for legacy than leadership. But 3 of them, Jensen, Marks, and Avery, were the younger cohort. Quiet, skeptical, and, more importantly, watching closely. Mr. Langridge, Jensen said, this is highly irregular. I set the folder in front of me. So is identity theft. I plugged the USB into the room's projection port. The screen behind me lit up with a chart. Forged loan documents, matching dates, identical routing numbers, every transaction tied to one name. Mine. This is the start, I said. What you're about to see isn't opinion. It's evidence. Noah controlled the slides. One by one, we showed the board. Loans taken under my name to fund building expansions. Credit cards assigned to executives used for personal expenses. One bill showed Howard spent over $6,000 at a luxury ski resort in Utah. Conflict of interest payments made from shell companies back into Langridge and Burr under inflated consulting fees. A murmur rippled through the room. Avery leaned forward. Is this verified? Noah nodded. We have dates, vendor invoices, and tax returns. Some of this qualifies as IRS reportable fraud, Marks rubbed his forehead. Why now? I answered, calm and steady. Because for years my name was used to cover their tracks. Now I'm taking it back. I watched their eyes as I spoke. Some widened in discomfort, some narrowed in calculation. But 3 of them, Avery, Marks, and Jensen, held their focus on me, not the screen. Me. They were listening. I'm not here to burn the company down, I said. I'm here to stop it from rotting further. I slid a 1-page motion across the table. Effective immediately, I request a formal vote of removal against Howard Langridge from his executive and board positions under clauses 4.3 and 9.2 of your governance charter. Silence. Even the air vent seemed to stop humming. You're asking us to vote out the founder, someone said from the screen. I'm asking you to protect your reputations before this becomes public record. Noah added, and before federal regulators ask why no one noticed. There it was. The leverage, not a threat, just inevitability with a timestamp. Marks cleared his throat. We'll need to consult legal. I have a lawyer on standby, I said, and media, if necessary. Avery smiled faintly. You came prepared. I came late, I said, but I'm here now. The meeting wrapped an hour later. No shouting, No dramatic walkouts, just murmurs and papers sliding across polished wood. As we exited the building, Noah checked over his shoulder. 3 of them are already texting. Good or bad? Hard to say, but they didn't look bored. I stopped under the awning, watching the snow flurry again. The sidewalks glistened, slush fading into hard frost. Downtown Burlington always looked cleanest in fresh snow, like a lie dressed in white. They'll fight dirty now, Noah said. I zipped my coat. So will I. This company was my legacy, Howard shouted. No, I said. It was Edith's. Outside the boardroom windows, the storm was pressing in. Thick snowflakes lashed sideways, carried by wind that rattled the glass like impatient fists. The storm wasn't the loudest thing in the room, though. That honor belonged to Howard. He stood at the head of the table, flushed crimson, veins bulging at his neck. Janine sat to the side, wrapped in a black wool coat she hadn't taken off since arriving. Her mouth was tight. Her fingers kept brushing her lap, like she wanted to say something but couldn't form it into words. I stood opposite Howard, the prop folder in front of me. Closed now. I wouldn't need to open it again. Everything inside had already been seen, shared, notarized, and believed. You think you can come in here with a few spreadsheets and bury 40 years? Howard barked. I didn't blink. Number I came with audits, emails, bank records, and board signatures. He laughed. It wasn't genuine. It was sharp, desperate, like someone trying to drown out a countdown. The board won't back you. I nodded to Avery, who sat 2 chairs to Howard's right. Let's find out. Avery cleared her throat. Motion on the floor. Remove Howard Langridge from all leadership and board responsibilities, effective immediately, under provisions 4.3, 9.2, and 9.6 of Langridge and Burr's governance charter. Seconded, said Marks. Thirded, said Jensen, almost before the last syllable was out. Howard's mouth opened, but nothing came out. The floor beneath him may as well have cracked. Avery looked to me. Would you like to present final materials? Noah stood and handed her a 1-page summary. Howard's overseas transfers to shell accounts in Bermuda and Luxembourg, a casino reimbursement labeled as a client entertainment event on a falsified quarterly audit, and over $200,000 in undocumented consulting fees routed through a personal LLC. God damn it, Howard muttered. You used her, Edith's name, like a shield. I stepped forward. She shielded herself. I'm just honoring the design. None of you would even be here without me, he snapped. Janine finally looked up. Her voice was quiet, but carried across the room. You're right, she said, but that doesn't mean you get to burn it down with you. The vote was called. 5 votes for removal. 1 abstention. Howard's chair didn't even creak as he sat back, stunned into silence. I handed Avery another document, this one signed by Louis Carmichael 2 days prior. It invoked a secondary clause in Edith's trust that named me as successor trustee and interim, acting CEO if any executive member was removed due to financial misconduct. Effective today, I said, I will be assuming temporary operational control of Langridge and Burr with a formal review scheduled within 90 days. Noah passed around the copies. Janine watched, eyes darting between each page like they might start burning. The storm outside had turned into white static, clinging to the windows in heavy curtains. Get out, Howard said to me, low and venomous. No, I said, you do. I didn't wait for security. I didn't need to. The boardroom door opened without me touching it. An assistant, unsure whether to step in or just let things unfold. Howard stood slowly, rage boiling under his skin, but no outlet left. He looked at Janine. You just gonna sit there? She didn't answer. When he walked out, the room didn't breathe until the door clicked shut. Avery turned to me. Interim CEO? For now, I said, until we find someone better. And if we don't? Jensen asked. I gave a small smile. Then I hope I deserve to stay. The room began to empty. Papers were gathered, laptops closed. Noah stepped over to me, voice quiet. You did it. I didn't respond right away. I was watching Janine. She hadn't moved. Our eyes met. Hers weren't angry, not even bitter. They were scared. And I didn't know yet if that fear was for what I might do next, or what she might lose if I didn't. The plaque on the wall read, "The Edith Chamberlain Foundation." I ran my fingers across her name. It was etched in brushed steel, mounted on exposed brick just inside the front entrance. The building had once been a lawyer's office, then a dance studio, then vacant for 3 years. Now, with one careful renovation and a lot of paperwork, it was a place for something new. The hallway smelled of new paint, coffee, and a hint of cedar. We'd kept the old wood floors, buffed clean. The walls were white, but the light fixtures were vintage, warm, not corporate. This place wasn't meant to intimidate. It was meant to invite. She'd hate the spotlight, I said aloud. Marissa smirked. Good thing you're not putting her face on a billboard. We walked deeper into the main room. Desks had been arranged near the bay windows, sunlight pouring across the hardwood in long amber lines. Irene Maddox, our newly hired director, stood with a mug in one hand and a thick folder in the other. You're early, she said. I still don't sleep much, I replied. She extended the folder. Preliminary outreach plans, first quarter budget, and 3 candidates for program leads. I took it, but didn't open it yet. Irene had a kind of pragmatic energy I admired. No nonsense, no small talk unless it mattered. She'd run community banks, taught financial literacy in underfunded school districts, and consulted for nonprofit boards in 3 states. When I asked her to lead this, she only had one question. Will I be allowed to actually build something? I said yes. She said, when do I start? You're sure you don't want to be listed as chair? She asked now, glancing at me. I want the name on the door to mean more than mine ever could, I said. This is hers. I'm just the mechanism. Marissa nudged me gently. You're more than that. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked over to the back room, where a long table stood beneath a skylight. A dry erase board leaned against the wall, already scribbled with phrases, emergency fund coaching, estate planning seminars, young adult finance toolkit. It was happening. Real things, not just redirection, not just guilt-fueled charity. Action. I'm moving 20% of Langridge and Burr's post-tax dividends into the foundation this year, I said. Ongoing annual support, reevaluated every January. Irene blinked. You serious? Completely. And I'll match every external donation up to $500,000. Marissa let out a low whistle. You're not just turning the page. You're writing a new book. Edith used to say, don't just keep it. Make it matter. Outside the window, downtown Burlington looked bleached by early winter. Cars passed with snow-dusted windshields. The sidewalk out front had a new bench. Our first donor, a retired teacher named Leah, had requested it. We already have 3 local families asking to attend the first seminar, Irene said. No marketing yet. Word of mouth's working. Then we stay quiet, I said. Let the work speak. Marissa rested a hand on my arm. You could take credit, you know. I looked at her. That's what they would have done. Her face softened. And you're not them. We returned to the front hall. I looked at the plaque again. The lettering was simple. No serif, no flourish. Just the Edith Chamberlain Foundation, centered, balanced, whole. I reached for the intercom and buzzed the front door. Irene raised an eyebrow. "We've got visitors?" she asked. I nodded. "High school seniors from North Winooski. They want to volunteer." "Without being required to?" Apparently one of them had Edith as a neighbor growing up. Said she gave them a piggy bank when they turned 8. I smiled. "Let's use this to help people who never got a chance to say no." I stared at the message from Logan. "Mom says Dad's sick. She wants money. Again." The screen glowed cold in my palm. Morning light sliced through the window panes, bouncing off the snow-coated rooftops outside. My office was quiet, the kind of silence that's too still to be peaceful. Just quiet enough for the weight of a single text to feel like a brick on the chest. Marissa knocked once on the open door, then stepped inside. "You okay?" she asked. I turned the phone toward her. She read the message and sighed. "Same song, new verse." "No more silent rescues," I said softly, almost to myself. "That was the vow." Marissa sat on the edge of my desk, crossing her arms. "You know what's coming next. They'll spin it like I'm abandoning him." "But you're not." I unlocked the side drawer of my desk, the one where the last version of the folder lived. It didn't hold inheritance documents or fraud spreadsheets anymore. Now it held pamphlets, rehab programs, debt counseling resources, long-term care planning. Resources I had researched myself, annotated even. It wasn't that I didn't care, I just couldn't keep pretending that writing a check was love. The phone rang. Logan. I didn't let it go to voicemail. That would have been its own message. "Hey," I said. "You got the text?" I did. A pause, a calculated breath. "He's not doing well," Logan said. "And Mom, she's falling apart. She says you have the means." She said that last year. And the year before that. "Yeah, well, this time it's real." I pinched the bridge of my nose. "What's wrong with him?" "They think it's heart failure. He collapsed at the house yesterday. Refused an ambulance." I exhaled. Not out of surprise, out of confirmation. Something had always been coming. That's what happens when rage lives in the body for too long. "I'll help," I said slowly. "But not in the way you're expecting." There was silence. "I'm sending a package," I continued. "It'll include a list of rehab facilities, addiction treatment, financial therapy. I've even prepaid a few intake sessions. But I'm not writing a blank check." "You're joking." "No," I said. "I'm done pretending that bailing someone out is the same as showing up." "She's your mother," Logan said, voice rising. "He's still your father." "Is he?" I asked. "Or was he just the guy who kept the lights on while stealing my name off the meter?" "That's not fair." "Neither was laundering my trust fund through a ski condo in Utah." The line went quiet. "Look," I added, tone gentler, "I'm not closing the door. I'm just no longer building them a hallway every time they torch the one behind them." Logan's voice came back, strained. "You sound like them now." "No," I said. "I sound like someone finally done performing worth." "You think money is the only way we ask for help? But sometimes it is the help." "Then maybe it's time you found a better kind." He hung up. I stared at the phone for a few seconds, before setting it down beside the folder. Marissa hadn't moved. "That hurt?" she asked. "Yes." "But?" "But it hurt less than saying yes and hating myself after." She nodded. "You want me to drop it at the post office?" "I already addressed it." She stood, taking the folder gently. "I'm proud of you." Not yet," I said. "But I'm trying." The sunlight outside shifted. The frost on the windows glowed, fractals of light skating across the walls. It felt both fragile and final. Marissa paused at the doorway. "What are you thinking?" she asked. I looked at the phone, the closed drawer. the window that didn't show anything new but somehow felt different. "I think," I whispered, "this is the first kind thing I've done for myself." They arrived early. My mother wore her courtroom smile. Howard looked like a man emptied. I watched them from inside the Foundation's meeting room. Glass walls, soft lighting, chairs too comfortable for confrontation. The plaque with Edith's name gleamed behind me. No one said it aloud, but it framed the entire encounter. Janine's coat was pressed, her lipstick untouched. Howard's jacket hung loosely on his thinner frame. He hadn't shaved. His eyes darted around like the walls might judge him if I didn't. I stood when they entered. A formality. Nothing warm. "Thanks for coming," I said. Janine offered a tight smile. "You said it was important." "It is," I replied. "Not urgent. Just overdue." They sat. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't need this to feel like an apology. "I'm not here to rehash the past," I began. "We've done that, explicitly or otherwise. This isn't about relitigation. It's about realignment." Howard let out a small cough. Whether it was medical or metaphorical, I didn't ask. Janine glanced at the framed Foundation charter on the wall. "So this is the legacy now?" "This is a legacy," I said. "One I believe in. One I don't need anyone's permission for." They didn't reply. "I want to be clear," I continued. "I'm not cutting you off emotionally, but I'm rebalancing the terms. No more open checkbooks, no more quiet rescues. From now on, I support what builds, not what maintains dysfunction." Howard looked like he might argue, but nothing came out. "I've pre-funded access to therapy," I said, sliding a small envelope across the table. "Rehab, family counseling, financial literacy programs, take it or don't. But the choice is yours, not the cost." Janine reached for the envelope but didn't open it. "And if we say no?" she asked. "You already have," I said gently. "Every time I tried to matter only when convenient." That hung in the air for a moment, a beat too long. Janine folded her hands. "Do you hate us?" "No," I said too quickly. Then I paused. "But I've stopped needing to love blindly." Howard finally spoke, voice rough. "You always thought you were better." "I hoped I could be different," I said, "and I am." He sank into the chair as if deflated. Janine's eyes were unreadable now, neither glossy nor dry, just tired. "We wanted to protect what was ours," she whispered. I nodded. "And I've learned how to protect what's mine." They stood. No final barbs, no weepy reconciliations, just the shuffle of coats and shoes and things unsaid. I walked them to the glass door, but didn't open it for them. They didn't expect me to. Janine paused before leaving. "She always liked you best," she said, "even when you weren't around." I didn't answer. They walked out together, steps in sync but no longer tethered. I didn't close the door behind them, but I didn't rush to open it again either. I stood in the hallway of the Foundation, watching a student click through slides about financial abuse. The seminar room was full. Muffled chatter bounced off the exposed brick walls as the last of the day's light pushed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the backs of folding chairs. Irene had rearranged the room last week, added round tables to make it feel less like a lecture, more like a conversation. The projector flickered. The slide read, "Financial control when love comes with a receipt." The student presenting couldn't have been older than 20. She wore a deep green sweater and boots still wet from the snow. Her voice was steady as she told a story about her mother, a credit card, and how it took 2 years to realize help had been a leash. I stepped back, letting her words fill the space. "You okay?" Marissa asked, stepping beside me with 2 paper cups. "I'm listening," I said, accepting the coffee. "She's good," she said. "And brave. She's telling a story a lot of people are still afraid to hear themselves in." Marissa sipped. You remember what I said? You say a lot of things, she nudged me. Someone will need this story, she reminded me, and not just yours. The room applauded as the slide changed. A new speaker stepped forward, this time a young man. Skinny, wiry voice, but honest. He talked about how his father drained his student loan account for a business that didn't exist. How shame kept him silent. How he thought it made him weak. No one tells sons that money can be a weapon too, he said. Marissa and I sat at the back of the room now. Irene joined us, scribbling notes in a worn leather notebook. A few interns darted around, offering pamphlets and warm cookies from the lobby. I glanced across the room, and that's when I saw it. The painting, hung just behind the speakers. Edith's forest, the one with the orange canopy, and the faint silhouette of a deer barely visible in the mist. We'd had it cleaned and reframed after her house was cleared. It was supposed to hang in my apartment. But one day I told Irene to take it instead. Quietly. No plaque, no credit. I didn't need it in my hallway. It belonged here. She would have liked this, I said. She would have corrected their grammar, Marissa whispered. I chuckled. And color-coded the slides. Marissa pulled out her phone. You'll like this. She handed it over. A photo. Logan's half-sister Julia, smiling, wearing a volunteer badge, standing beside a donation drive box with a stack of financial literacy kits. She signed up last week, Marissa said. Didn't tell anyone, just showed up. I stared at the photo longer than I meant to. She didn't grow up with them, I said. Not fully. No, Marissa said, but she grew up watching what happened when no one said anything. The final speaker closed with a quote. The chains that bind us often look like gifts. Applause followed. Irene stood to thank everyone, but I stayed seated. I watched as students hugged, as someone passed tissues, as another passed around sign-up forms for next month's session. One of the interns tripped over a chair leg. Laughter bloomed, light and unburdened. And then I saw it. A girl, maybe 19, stepping forward to ask a question. Her hand trembled. Her voice cracked halfway through. But she didn't stop. She didn't apologize for the shaking. She reclaimed her voice anyway. That, I whispered, is the whole reason. Marissa smiled. And you didn't even need to speak. We stood slowly. The room was thinning out. Irene waved goodbye to someone by the door. I looked back at the painting one more time. The trees still leaned inward, still glowed with that impossible orange. But something felt different now. Not the forest. Me. As we stepped into the hallway, Marissa asked, "What are you thinking?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Maybe not every tie has to be cut. Just loosened enough to breathe." Edith's final letter sat untouched for weeks. Tonight, I opened it. Snow fell outside the apartment, layering the windows in soft, white noise, the kind that made the city sound farther away than it really was. A kind of hush that invited honesty, or demanded it. The envelope had yellowed slightly. My name was written in her slanted script, looped letters, confident but unhurried, like she always wrote when she wasn't trying to convince anyone but herself. Inside, a single sheet of cream stationery, folded once, no signature, no heading, just words. Derek, if you're reading this, it means the fire came. But so did your own voice. It's tempting to confuse resistance with purpose. I did, for years. But peace, real peace, doesn't shout. It listens. It builds. If the day comes when you must choose, walk toward peace, even if no one applauds you for it. Not every inheritance is money. Some of it is silence you must learn to break. Some of it is grace you must learn to give yourself. And if you're wondering, yes, I saw you. Even in the moments you thought I wasn't looking. You were enough then. You're more than enough now. Love without conditions is rare, but not extinct. Live like it isn't. The ink had bled just slightly at the period. I folded the letter and slid it back into its envelope. The USB drive she'd left, the one with the video, the fail-safe clause, the last safety net, sat in my drawer now. Unused since the legal transfer. I could have erased it, filed it away, but I kept it. Not for defense, for memory. Across the room, the folder lay closed. Empty now. The last documents filed, the last copies shredded. It had served its purpose. No more contracts to navigate, no more hidden clauses. Just paper now. I opened a photo album I hadn't touched in years. There was one of me in a puffy jacket, age 6, standing beside Edith at a gas station in rural New Hampshire. We were laughing about a spilled Slurpee. Another of Marissa and I on the Foundation's opening day. Her smile bigger than mine. A third showed the team in the seminar room last week, arms linked, light blooming through the glass. I set the album down and turned to the laptop. The cursor blinked on the About Us page for the Foundation website. I'd been avoiding it for months. Every draft sounded performative or hollow. But tonight, something felt finished enough to speak. I typed, "Real love never charges interest." And then I closed the laptop. No fanfare, no metaphor, just a breath. I didn't feel like the good son anymore, or the rebel, or the scapegoat, or the protector. Just Derek. Whole. Outside, the snow kept falling. The street lamp made it glitter like powdered glass. I walked to the window and placed Edith's letter on the sill. My reflection caught me by surprise, older than I remembered. Softer, too. I didn't need anyone's forgiveness. I'd finally forgiven myself. The snow hadn't stopped. It layered the windows in silence. Soft, steady, unhurried. We don't always get closure wrapped in forgiveness. Sometimes it comes when we finally decide to stop proving we were worthy all along. If this story touched something in you, maybe it's time to loosen a few ties too. Just enough to breathe. If this story resonated, hit subscribe and join me for the next journey.